This podcast is being brought to you in part by the veteran-founded Hero Soap Company located in Phoenix, Arizona. In today's environment, we must be aware of the products we apply to our skin. As a two-time cancer survivor, I cannot afford to take chances, and I use these products myself. The soaps will leave you feeling clean and refreshed. All the products made by the Hero Soap Company are made in the United States with the highest quality ingredients sourced from companies in the United States whenever possible. The products are made in small batches to ensure high quality and contain premium essential oils and fragrance. All Hero soaps are created without synthetic colorants, parabens, and sulfates that are irritating to the eyes, skin, mouth, and lungs, and are cruelty-free, meaning these products are not tested on animals. Each 5-ounce bar of soap is handmade in Phoenix, Arizona, and the body wash is available in 8 ounces with such refreshing scents as the woods, tea tree, lavender, the fields, bourbon, lime, the pines, and Arctic. You will absolutely love this soap. Please also check out their gear for sale. All the products are reasonably priced. Being veteran founded, the company understands the dedication and sacrifice that each family makes to serve their country. A portion of sales is donated back to charities that are focused on helping veterans and our first responders. Over 1,200 bars have been sent to our deployed troops. Please check out their website, herosoapcompany.com, for pricing and a detailed description of all the products. When ordering, use the code RAP for a 10% discount. The company information will be listed in the podcast notes and featured on the podcast website, Facebook group, page, and the podcast Instagram. Welcome, everyone, to It's a Wrap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. Before we start, I would like to thank all our listeners, supporters, and sponsors that have helped to make this podcast so successful. The podcast is being heard in all 50 states, all provinces of Canada, and over 60 countries around the world. The podcast has been ranked by FeedSpot as one of the top 35 overcoming adversity podcasts on the web from thousands in that category, and is ranked by traffic, social media followers, and content freshness. Please visit the website, itsawrapwithrap.com, for all of the episodes and to order our logo merchandise, of which a portion of sales is donated to various charities, and other information regarding the podcast. This podcast features people who have overcome life's challenges and adversities, people who can inspire, motivate, and educate us on an assortment of topics. My guest today is Michelle Shekhinah. Michelle was married for many years and was a stay-at-home mom with 2 special needs children. In 2015, she realized that her husband was addicted to drugs. In this time, she had experienced financial, emotional, and sexual abuse from him, which turned into him sex trafficking her. Michelle spent many nights crying on the floor until one night she saved her life and ran for the door. Since then, she has been healing herself with therapy and other techniques. She has become a strong mom for her children, in addition to being an advocate and mentor for other women and teens who have suffered any form of trauma and abuse. Her story is compelling, heartbreaking, yet full of hope and reconciliation. Welcome, Michelle, to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Ron. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming out, telling your story, being vulnerable. I am so sorry to hear about what you've experienced, but I know you are here to talk about it and help others understand what some women endure, and to help women out there going through this and not knowing how to navigate it, and to enlighten all of us so that we may help a family member or friend when we are made aware of those going through it. Now, Michelle, tell us about your life before any of the negative issues arose.
Well, my life was pretty great. I was raised well and from a large family, a professional father in the medical field, mother who supported him. They are still married after 60 years and still together, thank God.
Wow.
Yeah, I have lots of siblings. I'm the youngest of them, and I was raised in a very traditional religious household, and it was something that I always wanted to have for myself going forward. That was my dream. At 22, I became a licensed healthcare professional and started working in that field. So my life was pretty set. I was very independent at that age. At some point, I worked with my father in his field. And the next step, of course, is finding someone to be with. In a lot of different cultures, that's what happens at certain ages. It's time to get her married. So that's where I was.
Right.
And I actually met my ex's parents before I met him. Our parents were friends. And when his mother found out that I was single, of course, she did the whole "I have a son for you." So he and I met, and this is before the internet and cell phones and all that. I'm showing my age a little bit, but we met over the phone, and then 3 days later we went out, and it was fine, and it looked like a fairy tale. And he proposed to me within 2.5 months in front of 100 people.
Wow.
And ladies, I will tell you, if that happens, run the other direction. I say that that's a sacred moment that should happen alone, and then the celebration afterwards is fine. But there was so much pressure that I didn't even speak for a while. And the person who was conducting the service that we were at the time, was like, well, so I, of course, said yes. Then he wanted to rush into the getting married and cinching the deal. And I said, wait a second, let's not do that. But within a year and a half, we got married and started a family, bought a house, started a business, all of that. And then it was a little normal for a while, but then my son had some issues, and the business that we had that I was working with him in, I had to step back and become a stay-at-home mother. I stepped out of my own career to do that, and it seemed very normal for quite a while. He did want to go out with other friends that didn't have children. Where I live, there's a lot of places that stay open very, very late or early, depending on how you look at that. And I was the oldest one, I was the only mother, and this is what he guided me towards. And I went along because he was my husband, and I loved him, and I thought that he would guide me in the right direction. So eventually that ended, and we had another child a few years later. And again, it seemed very normal, very traditional household. We had holiday dinners. I was active in the community, religious organizations, leadership classes, things like that I was doing. He had a business with somebody else, and I was in it for a little bit, but then I got kicked out. And that's fine. Um, but then things started to kind of get iffy, and I could see that he was coming home a little bit later or being a little bit more distant. And I noticed that I had to work more to keep his attention or that sort of thing. I saw him pulling away, wanting to watch TV a little bit more than, talking to me. But
Right.
I was so entrenched in almost like chasing him and raising the two kids and the house and the community and all that I was doing. And I had a couple of businesses of my own, which he, stopped at some point. And, I noticed what was going on. But again, no, the internet was there, but it wasn't, there's no social media yet at this point. So there wasn't an awareness. Well, 17 years roughly into the marriage, things got really bad. I had lost somebody very close to me, and it was unbelievably traumatic. And when I came home from that funeral that weekend away by myself, I said to him, I really wanted to live my life to its fullest. I wanted to enjoy life for myself. This was somebody who I was close with in age, and she always celebrated life. And I said, I'm going to live my life for both of us. And I didn't realize who I was saying that to, because he was already involved in things behind my back in the form of going out drinking during lunch, going to exotic dance places, doing drugs that I didn't know about. Things were going on that I wasn't aware of. And then what happened was, figuratively and literally, he took my hand and he led me down this path that he was already on. And it happened very, very slowly. There's a word that's used called escalation. And he was watching these things on a certain website and it escalated apparently. And he thought he could bring his fantasy and his reality into one. So there was a double life happening there that I wasn't aware of. There really was a triple life because there were things happening with both sides of the coin of what his preferences were, if you understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fine if somebody wants to do that, absolutely. But there needs to be a discussion and an agreement and transparency, and there was none of that. So what happened was he very slowly would be like, "Let's go out to dinner. Let's go to a movie. Let's go to a bar and have drinks." Okay, and then go home. And then it was, "Let's go out to dinner. Let's go to a bar. Let's go to this exotic dance place." And then it was, "Let's go here." And then let's try some drugs that he apparently was using, selling, all of that without my knowing. And there was no way I could say no. No was not an option. Anytime I pushed back, there was emotional abuse or there was guilt or shame or, "You're going to ruin the night." And, "Come on, don't you want to get closer?" Um, there was a lot of manipulation. And,
Yeah.
this is
Sounds like it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this is somebody he's very successful in sales. And, I always say that if somebody's good in sales in their business, they're going to be great at sales in any part of their life. And that's what happened. And so, when somebody is near you and putting something, in your face, and it's just like, here. And I couldn't, I really, as much as I tried, I couldn't back away from him. And then it was kind of like, he was so relentless. It was like, "Fine, I'll do it." And again, the guilt and the shame was enough for anyone. And it got to be the point where sometimes I didn't know what was going on. And all of the things that he did, again, it was escalation. And then it was, "Well, let's go to this place." And he would he would kind of exploit all of my childhood stuff that he knew, all of the wounds that I had, everything. And there was a group of friends that were introduced and he told them all of that. So it was like, "Oh, she wants attention, or she wants to feel loved, or she," and then it was, boom, taking off my shirt, putting drugs on me, and telling his friends they could do anything they want with me. And at this
Wow.
point, he was controlling the situation. Everybody was drinking. He would make sure everyone had something in their system. And, I say it was like a whirlpool spinning. I was in the middle of it and I didn't know which way was up. And I thought that people that I was friends with, we considered ourselves family. So the guys I thought were like my brothers and would protect me from him, and the women I thought I could share my challenges with them, but then didn't know that they had their own agenda too. And, I came from, like I said, something very traditional. And I walked into this, cesspool of people who were friends for years, who this was their life. And, I walked in with something like a homemade plate of cookies or a gift for the host or something like that. And they looked at me like I was crazy, but that's how I was raised. And it's like, well, it's not that kind of party, it's this kind of party. And, he was the ringleader. He would
Yeah.
make sure. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say these people that that he surrounded you with that you're
Mhm.
describing were were these all new people in your life, or were some
Yes.
of them old people from a past
Mm-mm.
time?
They were all new.
They were all new.
There were a few groups of people. They were different people for different things. He was very big on compartmentalizing people. That, and everybody has a price. That's his motto. So they were all new to me.
Okay.
He knew a few of the guys from other people, and they were all new to me. And I didn't know anybody. My friends were part of women's groups or religious groups, and that's who I connected with and who I
Right.
hung out with. But at some point, he said no more because they weren't as exciting. They were very boring,
Boring to
and I
him.
was
Yeah.
it's boring to him. And I was doing fundraisers. I was having, I'd have 100 people in my house for a fundraiser, and then the next weekend he'd want to do this. And in the midst of all this, I'm still raising two children
Sure.
and
Sure.
myself pretty much, because if we were out, we'd be out until the sun was coming up, and he'd go to sleep and sleep until the next afternoon or the next evening and want to do it all over again. Whereas, I would have maybe 2 3 hours of sleep and then get up, with the kids or before the kids, make breakfast, do the laundry, all of that kind of thing, doing homework. And for both my kids, I had teams of doctors and teachers and tutors and advocates because of their issues. I mean, I'd fight the school board for their rights. I was advocating for other children in the midst of all of this.
Well, you
I
must
was
have been completely exhausted from this.
exhausted. Well, that was a big thing, is like sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
And as much as I could try and push back, there's a point where you put your hands up and you're like, I can't, I don't know what to do. And unfortunately, my family was isolated from me. He talked so poorly about them that even I didn't want to be around them because I was completely brainwashed. And they have
Wow.
terms for it now. They've got red flags, they have gaslighting and narcissism and all of that. We didn't know from that back then.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
some of it was a few years ago, but there was no TikTok and whatever. This is this went on for about 6 years. And the thing about it, I've said this before, is when you're dealing with an abuser, the reason why, one of the reasons why people stay is because it's really confusing. Because if you fall in love with somebody and they seem perfect, every box is checked, they look great on paper, your families are together, his parents were at my house every weekend, I made brunch, that sort of thing, we were family. And they didn't know this side to him, of course. But it's confusing because you have this idea of what somebody is and you hope and pray that they're going to become that again. Well, somebody who's really smart will do that part time. So I say it's 4 days on, 3 days off. Four
So
days. He's wonderful.
he was like a chameleon.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. In any group, any group. And there was almost like a routine. Friday, Saturday. It actually started Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday was fun time, and maybe Friday he was good. And sometimes in the end towards it was the opposite. He wasn't good, but you know Monday he'd be tired, so he was kind of nice, like let's have dinner. And he'd go on the bed to watch TV. He's like, come on, honey, let's watch TV. So then I'd get 3 good days from him. Good days meant he came home, I had dinner on the table, and then he went in the room, and my children and I would do all the chores, and then, he'd want to watch TV. And that was a good night because there wasn't pressure. There wasn't even abuse within our own bedroom, which was going on. Um, and he was kind until he wasn't. And then when we would go out, it was ignoring me or wanting to do things or tricking me or manipulating me. So again, I was confused with all of that. And the
Were you,
longer the year.
well, I
Mhm.
was going to say, were you walking on eggshells?
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. That book is, somebody actually gave that book to me, ironically, at the end. I was. And he was so good because he would flip the script. He would say that he was walking on eggshells. He would say that he was doing this. And
Yeah.
it was, and
He's the,
so again,
he was portraying himself as the victim.
correct. Oh, and still does.
Yeah.
And I would look in the mirror and I'd be like, is he right? Is what he's saying true? And anyone who says, am I the narcissist? Am I the one who's doing this? Am I being, the abuser? That really means that you're not. Because if you're going to question yourself and your personality and your behavior, it usually means that you're not the one doing it. There might be some stuff there, but not to the extent that somebody's going to accuse you of.
How did you discover your husband was addicted to drugs? And do you know what substances he was using?
Well, yeah, it was everything that he made me take. It was, how did I find out he was addicted to drugs? Well, he always said he had an addictive personality.
Uh-huh.
And for many years, it was food or porn or attention or success. It was something like that. The drugs was I when I told him I really wanted to live our lives to its fullest, he brought that out. And I thought, okay, this is different. I had no experience with this. I didn't come from this. My parents never did drugs. I mean,
Yeah.
they were very young when they were married. My dad was very young when he was a professional. So I was really scared of it. And I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how to do it. And it was cocaine. And where I live, it's everyone's doing it. And that was the thing. Everyone's doing it. And everyone in around us was. And I was really bad at it. And, I would get sick easily. And, I wasn't a drinker, even though he accused me and told everyone in my life that I was. It was that. And then I realized he was selling it when I was looking for something in the bathroom in underneath his sink. And I found what looked like a scale, and there were like a hammer and some other things that were very odd. And, this wasn't a guy that was fixing the house.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so when I found the scale and the bags, I was like, whoa, this is not, and again, I'm a healthcare professional. I know pharmacology, and I knew this was a bigger problem that I had ever imagined. And I confronted him, and he made very light of it. And I was like, I said, what are you doing? You are the father of two children. And if somebody gets arrested, they're going to throw you under the bus. And even though things were already scary, that's when it got really, really scary for me. Because at that point, I knew that there were people he was quote unquote friends with that could really hurt my family, my children. You get somebody mad or upset, you see it in the movies, and this is what I'm thinking. Because again, I don't know from this.
Right. Right.
And that's been my fear for a very long, long time, even to this day, where my children don't stay with him. My youngest just became an official adult and has decided to stay with me full time. And I said, don't go near that place where he's at. And because it takes one mad person, one upset person to really hurt you. Anyway, so that's how I found out. And then I realized that that was the case when my girlfriends, or my friends who I thought were my friends, started asking me if my husband has anything to sell to them. And I had no idea there was a connection there. Or he would tell me, so and so reached out to me and wants me to drop this off, or they're going to pick this up. And I was like, what is happening? How did my life go from doing fundraisers and events at my religious organizations and my special needs organizations for the kids? How did it go from that to this?
Yeah.
And to be
Yeah.
quite honest, I still ask myself, because it was all without my knowing, and it was all behind the scenes. And I've seen his Venmo, and it has been going on since way back when.
You were living a
Getting
night. You were living a nightmare.
Well, I didn't know that. It's like I
Yeah.
didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that there were special massages happening, which he admitted to in the end. I didn't know that he was doing that when he would go on his work, his work conferences in Vegas. I didn't know any of that was going on. I was very naive, and I trusted him. This is somebody who I thought, we had a religious wedding ceremony, which I had later found out that he was doing drugs at our wedding and was very hungover from doing it at our wedding.
Oh wow.
Um, oh yeah, I found that out after I left. And well, I was thinking about my parents, and I remember telling my father that. And it's just it's so upsetting, and it's amazing to me how big this can reach a family or a community, really, something
Yeah.
like this. And I stayed quiet because nobody knew what was going on. Nobody had an idea. And that's my lesson to people that have anyone in their lives, that where you see them change their behavior, or they, like, I started dressing differently because I had to, in order to make him happy, in order to be accepted into the group, accepted into some of these houses that I went to, or the clubs that we went to. I had to dress a certain way. my look completely changed.
The podcast is so happy and proud to have Blue Sky CBD as one of our sponsors and supporters. At Blue Sky CBD, they know that the highest quality CBD starts from the seed. Blue Sky partners with sustainable, responsible farms for superior hemp plants to extract their CBD and other healthful phytonutrients. Each of Blue Sky's products contain high concentrations of CBD for maximum impact, and Blue Sky offers some of the lowest cost per milligram CBD on the market. All Blue Sky's products are THC free and are tested by a third party laboratory for potency and purity. All this has made Blue Sky one of the only brands trusted by healthcare professionals across the United States. As the demand for CBD and its therapeutic potential have grown rapidly worldwide, it's difficult to know which products you can trust. At Blue Sky CBD, they don't just sell their products, they use their products. Blue Sky CBD proudly shares testimonials of their loved ones who use these products. Blue Sky CBD guarantees the potency and purity of each and every product they sell. Blue Sky tests their products 3 times. First, the plant is tested, next, the isolate, and last, the final product to ensure each product batch meets Blue Sky's high standards. A copy of the certificate of analysis is linked below each product description online. The Blue Sky CBD website contains client testimonials, including a case study for each testimonial from people just like you regarding people dealing with severe anxiety and insomnia, high blood pressure, pain management, headache, rheumatoid arthritis and spondylitis, and endocrine balance. Blue Sky even makes the product Pet Love for our canine and feline family members. There is some confusion between medical marijuana, CBDs that contain THC, and the THC-free hemp CBDs within states. Blue Sky CBD uses CBD derived from hemp that is THC-free, which is drug-free and can be sold everywhere legally. Blue Sky CBD wants you to feel confident with your purchase and offers you excellent customer service. If you are not satisfied with their products, you may request a refund of the full purchase price within 30 days of the product received date. When ordering, please use the podcast link to receive 20% off your initial purchase. The link and website information will be listed in the podcast notes.
I'm back to square one, or even less than the square one now, thankfully. And it's so much easier, but it's, there was almost like an admittance. You had to be a certain way, talk a certain way, look a certain way, and do certain things.
Yeah.
And that's what he led. And I didn't realize it. He had in his left pocket, he had the vials and the tin of, various drugs. And then on the right pocket, he had me. So when we walked in somewhere that I thought we'd be enjoying, or starting a dinner night that was a date night, or going to a friend's house for dinner, I didn't realize that I was part of that menu, or the part of that, that entertainment. And I say I became like a circus animal for him. It's like, look what I could do to my wife, look what I could make her do. Yeah. And when I started to push back, it was horrible. I mean, he really, really was abusive emotionally, wouldn't talk to me for a couple of days. And his drinking got worse. The drug use got worse. The holes in the wall came about. There were things that he did in the bedroom that were dangerous, as far as like strangulation, or, a belt around my neck. And, I didn't know that was, well, it's not normal, but I didn't know that was something that would happen, obviously. And I would tell somebody, and then he would tell them that, oh, I asked for it and I wanted it again. And, who in their right mind would want to be strangled and wake up and having their spouse still on top of them, coming out of being passed out. And it was really scary. I could have died in quite a few situations, being put in back rooms with security where I couldn't get out. And, there were men. And he's like here, and he's making sure everyone has enough drugs in them, and then taking pictures and taking videos. He would set up photos of me looking like I was doing something with somebody, but I wasn't. Or he would say, hey, go in the bathroom and take a picture. And, this was my husband asking for that. And I thought, okay, I'll give him a a sexy photo, but then now it's become blackmail. So it'll come out one day, and that's fine because I was a wife who was so devoted that when we were in a crowd or even alone, he wouldn't come near me, wouldn't talk to me. I'd sit in the corner of a restaurant or a bar, and he'd leave me by myself. Or it
Wow.
was having a stranger talk to me or the bartender and giving them money and saying, "Watch my wife for me," and then he disappears for an hour in the men's room or wherever he would go to.
Yeah.
And at first I thought it was chivalrous. Oh, he's having somebody look after me and what have you. And then a new friend of mine, he said that to, and this gentleman was older, and he was a little bit more sophisticated, and he even said, like, what did he just say to me? And I repeated what he said. He wants you to kind of look after me. And he said, Michelle, you're in your 40s. You're a pretty strong, independent woman. I don't think that that's something you need to do. You're okay. And I said, what? That's kind of nice. He goes, no, that's really not a nice thing to say to somebody, not for you and not for me. It's just very inappropriate. And I was like, I was really, again, very naive,
Yeah.
extremely, because I had been with him for, at this point, almost 20 years, my entire adult life. So all I knew was from him. And because I didn't have male friends, I didn't, that wasn't something that I wanted. When we had couple friends, he was friends with everybody. He was actually very good friends with my girlfriends, but yet I didn't let the guys come near me. They were like my brothers, like I said,
Yeah.
in different groups. And I kept them at bay until he allowed them to not be, which was really, it was it's so sad for me now because these are people that I really trusted. I really thought of them as family, and I was completely betrayed by what their intentions were. And forget the physical part of it, which was horrible. That alone is really heart-wrenching, and that I've had to get over also.
Oh, yeah. The trauma must have been intense.
Yeah, yeah, and it still is, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Michelle, for our audience out there,
Mhm.
what signs should someone look for if they think a spouse is hiding, doing drugs? What should they look for?
Erratic behavior, drastic changes, a change in appearance, a change in weight, a change in a hairstyle, the way they dress. That's really a whole, like, what should you look for as far as changing? Um, Definitely behavior and weight. Usually somebody who's on drugs doesn't eat as much or they'll want to drink more.
Okay.
Their accountability. Do they show up when they say they're going to show up? Take a look at your finances. We had a joint checking account at one point. There was $600 that came out, of an ATM or what have you, or the bank. And I, where did this go to?
Right.
And, at first he didn't, he's like, oh, just to pay bills. Well, everything was on auto pay. And so, I confronted him and again, the lashing out was there. And that was again towards the end when I knew that things were really, really bad.
Yeah. You knew
And
they were
that,
spiraling
yeah,
down.
they
Yeah.
were spiraling down. Exactly. Right. Those are the things to look for.
Michelle, how long were you in that abusive situation? And well, you kind of answered it, but
Mhm.
people are probably going, well, why did she stay in that situation?
Mhm.
If you could just repeat that again.
Sure. In that situation, it was 5 to 6 years. And again, it started off very slowly, and it escalated to the extent where I really was scared for my life. I should have been scared beforehand, but again, this was somebody who I devoted my life to.
Right.
And I thought, okay, he's going through something. He's going to change. I could save him. We had these kids. I had no income. These are all the reasons why people don't leave their spouse. The shame of it. Where do I go? What do I do? I was isolated from my family. My friends, I was ashamed to tell my real friends who would have taken me in probably in a second. I was afraid to tell my religious leaders. I was afraid to tell anyone. I was afraid to even tell any of the groups about the other groups because nobody knew anybody. So that's,
would you say fear of getting hurt was a major factor?
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And, I had since found trackers in my car. He told me he was having people follow me. There was medication going in me that I couldn't explain. He had syringes of things because he
Wow.
had doctor friends. He had syringes of lotions and, topical, not topical, yeah, a topical anesthetic that somebody would use if they were getting an injection in their face. You can put that on anywhere where there's pores and you'll become numb. So
Yeah.
think about somebody using that. And why would someone have that? And where would they get that from? He was giving me quote unquote B12 shots, and he'd be like, "Oh, you'll feel better. You'll wake up." He was having me get hormones because I was reaching that age, and he was taking his own, which made him insane. So, again, in the midst of all of this, I'm still trying to keep my life with my kids and their friends normal. So it really was a juxtaposition, both sides of the spectrum. But I was the mom who, when the kids were little, I had star charts for them, and I made menus for their food, and so I was the room mom, I was the PTA president amongst everything, and I was almost waiting for him to stop. And then I've seen old emails and texts. By chance, I found them. And even my own behavior, I could see changed because everybody around me that he had me around really was off the deep end. They really were, in the sense that they were over caring and over loving, and how they were talking to me, and and just, again, the whole brainwashing thing. It was like from a group, or more than one group. And so I was caught up in that whirlpool of what's normal. And the only thing that was normal was being in my house, raising my children, getting them to school, doing the laundry, getting their homework, doing all of that. So it's hard to leave a situation in that. And then I had no money. No, I had credit cards in my name that I found out later that he had opened, things like that. But I had nothing. I had no way to go stay at a hotel. I have pets. I don't want to leave the pets. These are all reasons why people don't leave, believe it or not.
Sure, they're trapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It's just amazing how you balanced being a mother and all the things that
Mm.
you endured.
No-
It's just
Nothing was,
amazing.
yeah, well, nothing was going to stop me with that. And even still, I mean, honestly, even after I left, the emotional abuse, the financial abuse is still happening. And I made it, and he told my kids stories that most, like, I couldn't even fathom. And my daughter was 13 at the time, and he's telling her these things that are so unbelievably inappropriate and incorrect. And even she questioned him. Like, how could she be running off with this person and doing this if she was volunteering at my school all the time? You know,
He was
and
lying. Yeah.
oh, absolutely.
He was trying to brainwash them.
He did a little bit with my son, and I had to work on that, but he did. And my youngest, she's a tough cookie, and she just confronts him and basically said, "That's incorrect." And my other one, but again, I always showed up. So even after I left, I showed up every day in the
Yeah.
dark to wake up my child. I would go back to the house, wake her up for school, get her dressed, make her lunch at the safe house, bring it. I take she and her friend to school. I pick her up from school, give her snack. Let's do homework, because he was wherever he was, whether he was at work or somebody's house, I don't know. And then I would make dinner. And if he was coming home, I would leave. And if not, I would tell him to stay out, and I would sit and have dinner with my kids. Then I knew he was coming home, and I would leave because I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to be near him. I was afraid to touch anything at that point. Everything was a danger, because at the end, he and I would be going out. I'd have a couple of sips of a drink that he would get or his friend would get from the bar, and I'd wake up in someone's house. I'd wake up on the bathroom floor. I would have a couple sips of a drink or one cocktail, and I'd have to go to the ladies' room, and then I couldn't hold myself up. And that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
They were
And of
drugging you.
course,
They were
yeah,
drugging you.
right.
Yeah.
And of course, there's pictures and videos, and he would say, "Hey, he'd talk to the phone, talk to the video," and he would record me.
Oh
You
my God.
know, and oh yeah, he'd have me call him by other names in our bedroom, which I just can't even. And and record me. So it looks like and appears like I'm with somebody else. And
Michelle, I was just going to
yeah,
say that at any time, did you lose hope or faith?
oh, absolutely.
You did?
Yeah. I mean, hope and faith is something that it can come and go. I'm very tied into my religion. Ironically, when I left, those days that every day that I dropped my daughter off at school, I would leave and go to my religious institution and I'd pray every morning. And I I got a lot of really great support. And of course, I was on the board of this place for many years and volunteered and I put on events and all of that. And he had reached out and called everybody and even admitted to it and telling them that I was an addict and that I cheated on him and that I had all this life. Meanwhile, I showed up every day and prayed and I was surrounded by people. At first they were and I knew something was going on because the president of this organization wrapped his he's like, you belong here. This is where you belong. You're safe here. And I was like, why are you acting like this? And then I figured that he had made all those phone calls.
Yeah.
But doing that and going there every day and praying and being part of that community really gave me hope and faith. And because that's my roots. I grew up going with my parents and my family and being religious and that I always draw back to a source, whether it be, God, the universe, any of that. And my kids gave me hope. It was my daughter that really taught me how to use my voice again. When we were in the car and he was yelling at me and she's in the back seat and he's yelling at her. She's yelling at him to stop yelling at me. I mean,
Yeah.
that's when I knew it was time to go.
What
Yeah.
was your exit strategy? Because eventually you must have had an exit strategy.
Well, so I kind of laugh about this because like most women, excuse me, we have enough clothes in our car and shoes in our car to live out of our cars for a week or so. And I did. But what happened was I went somewhere and I woke up. I didn't know where I was the next day, and my car had been moved. And I knew this is it. I can't go back to that house. I can't be near him. So I had somebody drop me off at a safe house, and it belonged to a friend. And I eventually got my daughter there for a couple of days, but she really fought me and she wanted to go back to her stuff in her bed and that's how the kids are. My son didn't
Right.
want to leave his video games, that sort of thing. And I knew that the kids were safe. It was me that was the problem.
Okay.
It was me that he wanted to hurt, not them. Although he hurt them by means of, he would get drunk and my son and I would have to go find him and pick him up. Or he would say things to me inappropriately in front of my daughter. So that wasn't good. Excuse me. So my exit strategy was I went to the safe house and excuse me, I told everybody. I told everybody what was going on. I had lost a lot of weight in a few months and I didn't know why. We're talking like 20 pounds in 3 months. And I eat really healthy, but that was a lot. And so they saw that and I was panicked and I was at this house for a few days and my body started having like mini convulsions. Like I was definitely detoxing from something and I couldn't identify with it. And um, before this, I was living in a room, not my bedroom, on a twin mattress on the floor. So I hadn't had any communication with him really, and I hadn't had any contact with him physically. So I knew by myself my body should have been clean. But when I went to this house, something was going on. My body was detoxing from something. And, sadly, I was afraid to go to the hospital because I was afraid that they wouldn't let me near my child if they found something in me. So I kind of healed myself with all of that and, eventually ended up getting tested for everything you can imagine. So I stayed there for about a month and a half. But my goal was always to find myself a job and work somewhere outside of the home for the first time in almost 20 years in my license, because I kept my license current as a healthcare worker.
Yeah.
And to get a home where, my children can come to, that was ours and it was safe, and it didn't include any men except for my son. And, that was my goal. And within a month and a half, I did that. And I haven't stopped since. And,
Let me take a very brief moment out to alert all our patients and caregivers out there that Rare Patient Voice, a supporter of the podcast, is paying for your input. Patients 16 years and older and caregivers, family, and friends of any disability, disorder, syndrome, illness, or condition have the opportunity to express their opinions through surveys and interviews to improve medical products and services. Who knows your journey better than you? Rare Patient Voice puts you in touch with researchers who are developing products and services that can help you and others with your condition. These researchers need input of patients to develop products and services that have significant impact on patients' lives. Over the past 9 years, Rare Patient Voice has paid patients over $10 million. When you join Rare Patient Voice, you may be invited to participate in interviews, surveys, or online communities where you will share your insights. Rare Patient Voice usually has hundreds of studies running at any time, so there are many opportunities to participate. You will earn $120 per hour for participating in these studies. By making your voice heard, you are a catalyst for change. Rest assured your input will be used to help other patients like you. There is no cost at all to you, the participant. You can get more information and sign up by clicking the link in the sponsor's notes.
I made sure that I was as financially independent as I could be and stable as I could be. And that took a while because, as you can imagine, the fear and the trauma and the panic was there. I had gone to Women in Distress, which is an incredible organization. They do accept men. Kids in Distress is a great place also. And actually it was there that the woman who did my intake told me that I was in a domestic violence situation and that I
Oh,
was being
yeah.
trafficked, because that's how unaware of that behavior being labeled as that I was. It's not even, it's like, well, he didn't punch me in the face. He did other things to me. He did, the last time we were together, slap my face a few times and hurt, something on the inside of me again. And so there's that. But, we see domestic violence as what we think is, bruises on the body and the face. Well, I did have bruises on my body, and I did have, some parts of my body that are not natural ruptured on purpose. So I have that issue. And he would say that to me. I didn't abuse you because I didn't hit you. But
Yeah, but what about all the mental abuse?
exactly. And when you strangle someone to the point where they pass out on purpose,
Yeah.
and you wake up and, they're still penetrating you, that's rape.
Yeah. If you had to do it over again, what would you do differently?
Run.
Run a lot sooner, right?
Yeah, run a lot sooner. I would take my kids and run. But again, the behavior didn't show up for a very long time. I mean, when you look at the pictures, we were like the couple that everybody wanted to be like, who wanted to emulate. I mean, his friends would say, "Can you clone your wife?" Because I loved being a wife. I loved doing all of that. And I was raised that way. And the difference is, and I say this all the time, is I would listen to my instincts, and I wouldn't get lost in people who were too nice too soon. Because we know the term love bombing now with a romantic partner, but that also happens with people that pretend they're your friends.
Right.
And then they, like for me, it was like, well, we're an exclusive club and we're letting you into our group. And, make sure you make your own cocktails, ladies, or
Yeah.
cover them or something to that effect. And it's really scary now. It
I
really is.
I guess everybody listening to this is kind of wondering, did this end in divorce?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It ended up in a legal divorce, a secular divorce, as well as a religious one, because to me, the spiritual connection, he didn't deserve that. Because when you agree to protect someone and provide and love, and you do the opposite, you don't deserve to be in any way connected to them at all.
Right.
And so that meant even more to me than the other. And, I got divorced over Zoom during COVID because I left right before COVID, which was a
Okay.
whole nother thing. And then I entered that my field of work, my healthcare field during COVID after not working for 20 years.
Wow.
And him sending me emails and, malicious,
Yeah.
things and threatening custody. And I mean, it was a whirlwind of anxiety,
Yeah.
which, I've been in special programs for trauma and domestic violence, different organizations. There's a lot of support out there. There's a lot of money to support people that need it. The shelters, there's food banks. I mean, I was one of those people that donated my time and money and objects and things like that, clothes to food banks, and then I was the one getting them.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know.
And never know. And the people, the donators on the wall are my friends or my colleagues. And, I always said, of course, that's something that's going to shift because even if I had $5 left to my name, I would give two or three to somebody else because I know at some point, even though I left with nothing, at this point in my life, I had skills and I had a license and I knew that no matter what, and this is my father talking to me in my head right now, that I had these skills and those will never go away.
Yeah.
And because I was, and I say this to a lot of stay-at-home moms, it's like they think that I'm just a mom. Well, take out the word just. And all of the skills that you learn as a parent who runs a household, especially with any sort of kids or a spouse that either has issues or, another one, you're the primary caretaker, you really walk away with something that you can use in the real world where you could actually get a job to make money if need be. So don't think that you don't have that. And some of these organizations really coach people in that, which is great.
Michelle, what's the number one piece of advice that you would give this to a woman that is being abused right now?
Listen to your instincts. Don't justify it. Don't reach out to me. I'll get you out. Don't wait. Don't let your kids see that, you know? And even if you really struggle for a while, it's going to make you stronger and it'll show your kids that that no matter what happens, you know, and I always say that, I come from a long line of very strong women and all of our ancestors, no matter who you are, fought battles and things that you and I would have no idea about,
Right.
thankfully. And that's within us. That's running through our blood, that energy, that strength, that resiliency, that hope, like you asked, that faith. And we have that. And our kids or nieces or nephews or anyone they'll see that and let them see you struggle. My daughter knows I'm working and I'm paying all the bills, but I'm not getting as much as he is. So we have to struggle a little bit in this house, but we're not going to give up. We're going to adjust some things, but we're not going to give up.
That's what this podcast is all about, giving hope and
Exactly.
telling people not to give
Absolutely.
up.
Do
And we
not give.
stress that all the time.
Mm-mm.
Michelle, what
Yeah.
kinds of therapy and other techniques have you used to heal yourself?
I've used everything from traditional therapy, from being on medication, because there's definitely an imbalance, especially when I left, especially with what also was put into my body. My nervous system, I say my nervous system is shot. We're adjusting it back. But because of all the abuse that I went through, including all of the medications that I was given, or the drugs that I was given, I should say, I have such a heightened sense of fight or flight and I'm learning different techniques. So I've done biofeedback, I've done EMDR, I've done Reiki, yoga meditation, guided meditation, prayer, chanting. which is a really fabulous thing. I preach that Tina Turner has great videos on YouTube when she became a Buddhist and she left her abusive relationship, that she started to learn how to chant, and she does it and it's online. Beautiful. And of course, she gave grace to all of that. And so I've done everything with the left brain and the right brain. During COVID, I started writing. And I'm very old fashioned. I like pen to paper. I have journals and, all of these different things. It's just a cathartic thing to do. It's very therapeutic. Talking about this is therapy. Absolutely. And switching the narrative, meaning, nothing has a meaning except for the one that you give it to. So yes, I'm a victim and a survivor, but I'm also somebody who thrived in it. I'm a healer. I'm a mentor. I'm an advocate, and I'm a writer and a coach and anything else that is on the other side of that healing rainbow, because I survived for a reason. There are so many times that I could have died. I
Yeah,
mean, somebody
absolutely.
somebody somebody puts a belt around your neck and, pulls backwards, and you have no control. I mean, it would have taken, like, he could have snapped it. I'm a thin person, and that could have happened in 2 seconds. And, you know, I could tell you so many of those instances. And at first, I went, why me? Why me? I mean, I was reading my journals earlier and listening to your podcast, trying to figure out, like, I would say, why did this happen? Why did he do this? He was supposed to love me, my husband, everything was my this, my that, because I
Yeah.
loved him that much. Um, but then I realized, and I felt so alone at those times. And then, why, God, why did you, have me in those situations where I couldn't get out? And then I had watched the Jeffrey Epstein show on Netflix, because one of my therapists had said, this is a situation almost that you had. And the next day I had a panic attack, and I started thinking about it, and I was breathing and trying to do everything, but it was so heavy because I put all of the pieces together, and I called my entire support system. And I recommend for you to have a list of support people that you can call any time of the day. And it could be somebody for this, somebody for that, somebody for this. So I called 8 people. Nobody answered, not one. And that's rare. So
Well,
eventually, after 45 minutes, I dropped and I got down on the floor. And I have a yoga mat by my window. And I looked up, sun's coming through, and it was back into the why. And I finally stopped the crying and the panic, and I got really still and quiet. And it almost felt like I was on drugs. It was that quiet, like the numb feeling. If you've had any sort of, it's for people when they have seizures or you come out of being passed out, it's that numb feeling. But I was open to getting an answer at this point because I couldn't think anymore. Those OCD ruminating thoughts, there was nothing, it was empty. And I immediately got, I was there with you the whole time. You survived. And you survived to tell my story, your story, and you survived to say that you were not alone in that situation, and people aren't alone.
right. And I
And
just
it,
want to, I just want to leave you with this thought. You kept saying, why is this happening to me?
mhm,
And we've been through this with other guests.
of
And
course,
I always tell them, don't ask that. Ask, why is this happening for me?
absolutely.
And
Well,
you may not know why it's happening for you at the time,
yeah,
but you'll
yeah,
figure it
right.
out in the
I didn't
in the
even,
end.
right. I didn't even think about that actually until after I left, because I was so in that cyclone of trying to
Yeah.
keep it all together.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. So and then it was like, it wasn't even why, it was what happened. Like, it's like, when you're in an accident and you look at the car and you're like, how did that happen? And that's where I was more like, where did my life go wrong? Like, how did I get from this to this? And that was the answer that I got was, you survived something and many years that most people wouldn't survive.
Right.
The women in my life, they've all said I wouldn't have been able to survive any of that. Not at all. If I was there one more week, I would not be here
Well,
talking to you.
that was your purpose. You found
So
your
my
purpose.
right. So my purpose is to help others that have
Exactly.
gone through that. And
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, listen, I've always been a healer and helping people since I was a little kid, people and animals, kids, but now it's a whole different level.
Yeah.
And
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 thank God
I
you're out there. Thank God you're out there to help people.
absolutely thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And that's my goal. It's my mission. I can identify with the child to some extent. It's very different, but he played on all my childhood wounds, and I was really naive. And in that scenario, it's almost like you're dealing with a young person and not an adult. The
That's
adult in
true.
me, the adult in me was the mother. And in this situation, it wasn't. It was the girl that got bullied, the girl that was the ugly duckling. It was, and he would tell people that it was the girl that, walked around in shame, or, her parents might have not been there. And that's what, again, that's what people prey on. Those
Yeah.
abusers, those kidnappers, those traffickers, that's what they prey on. And it's like, here, I'll love you. I'll pay attention to you. I'll do this. You do this for me, or you take this and you're going to feel so much better. And then, then it's like an attack on you. And so I can identify with that teenager. And so, that's what I'm doing. And that's my goal, is to just move forward with this. And
Excellent.
yeah, and my children want to be involved in it too.
Oh, that's
You
even
know,
better. That's
yeah, I
great.
mean, because they've survived their own side of it. And, I told you earlier, they've had their own issues and their own, quote unquote special needs, their abilities, not their disabilities, their abilities. And they've come out the other side. Excuse me, they've come out the other side as well. And, we've talked about speaking together and going through all of this as a family, because, that generation, the younger generations, they
Yeah.
got it going on. They're more aware than you and I even know. Of course, they make fun of me all the time that I'm a dinosaur at this point, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So
Well, hopefully they'll take their lead and help others their age. And
yeah,
and
right,
that's
and
a
they're
good thing.
yeah, and they're doing it. My
Yeah.
youngest is already fighting for women's rights, and rights of some of her peers she's fighting for. And the state that I live in has gotten a little crazy now. So those kids are using their voices, and she's definitely doing it. And my son is very empathetic, and I've taught him how to be empathetic to women, to his friends that are going through their bad moments. And he listens and he helps them through it, and he's kind, and he doesn't want anything from them. He's just very kind, like a listening ear.
Right.
And
Well, I always tell people out there listening to this, don't judge people. You don't know what they're going through.
absolutely, you just have no idea. I mean,
You have
nobody
no
knew what
idea.
was going. No idea. Nobody does, even still in
No.
my professional life, or when I meet people. Nobody does. I mean, I sat in the movie listening to Sounds of Freedom
I said,
in the
just saw it
movie.
today.
Phenomenal, isn't it? Well, I can
Yeah.
identify. I can identify. I had about 3 panic attacks during the movie, but I can identify with that. The little girl before and after.
Yeah.
I look completely different. My behavior is completely different. But I sat there, and afterwards, when they show the message at the end,
Yeah.
I thought to myself, these people are crying. And I mean, we were all bawling. We were all talking about it. They were all talking about it. And I sat there in silence thinking, these people have no idea that that's me, that was me, that I went through that,
Yeah.
that I was an unwilling participant in people, men, women coming after me, and somebody giving me up and somebody giving me away. And I had no way to get away from a situation. And, they did it for their own pleasure and their own thrill of it. And I survived that.
Yes, you
And
did. You are a survivor and you're an
yeah,
overcomer. You've
I'm an
overcome.
overcomer and
You
an
are an
overachiever. I've
overcomer.
always been an overachiever,
Right.
and thankfully. And again, it's like we were talking about the podcast that I listened to recently of yours, and it was a woman with a similar story. And, we all have this strength within us, and it's all of those ancestors, those 4,000 and so people that both came before us, that created us, right?
Right, right.
All of those people, we have their strength inside of us, and I'll tell you what, that's power. And and it separates and that good and that power and that strength separates us and is able to fight the evil in other people. And
Absolutely.
remember that. So I have pictures of all the women that came before me around my house, and in my, especially on my kitchen cabinets. So when I'm cooking holiday dinners and I'm making food for the family, I talk to them, and I'll tell you, it's really great to connect with those that came before, because they have stories and resiliency, and they fought for their lives.
Yep. Courageous
And
people.
really, and so that's who we are. We're made up of that. So there is hope and faith. And
Absolutely.
when if things get bad, even for a moment, I look at that and I'm like, okay, I hear you talking, and it's good stuff.
Michelle, how can people contact you?
My website is the best way. It's from the floor to the door.com. You have
Okay.
to put the .com. And that's my website. There's a blog on there with pieces that I've written that are coming out in my books. They can contact me, and they can email me any time of the day, because I'm up at all hours. If they want to talk, if they want to coach, if we want to do a program, something similar that I went through, and I cater that to every person, of course. I individualize their treatment plan. And I have other people that I work with that have gone through different situations and have come out the other side. So, depending on your situation, of what you went through and what your needs are and what you want to accomplish and what you want your life to look like, we can figure that out together too.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just want to let everybody know who's listening to the podcast, wherever you are, that information will be in the podcast notes. I want to thank you so much, Michelle, for sharing your
Thank
story
you.
and giving us all the insight into this issue. It takes a lot of courage to come forward and make yourself vulnerable to help others. I know I speak for everyone listening in wishing you good fortune, good health going forward. Comments
you.
and suggestions for the podcast, you can email me at itsawrapwithrap@gmail.com. Our Facebook group is It's a Wrap with Rap. We're on Twitter at Rapper, WRAPPER 130. Instagram, It's a Wrap with Rap podcast. The website is itsawrapwithrap.com. All the episodes are on there. There's other information, logo merchandise. And half of the sales will go to a charity. Each month we'll have a different charity. All the podcasts are on YouTube. It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening. Everyone, please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.